I actually started my career in Vietnam, and I find it ironic that 45 years later I'm building a national monument for some military working dogs. There I was a youngster, had a lot of hair, full of myself, right out of high school, and I saw my first combat on May 6, 1966. We were trapped on three sides. The enemy was closing in. We took a lot of casualties. My best friend on the right of me, we were fighting from a prone position out in the open, and he got hit with the machine gun blast from an enemy. We carried him out, put him on a helicopter. That was the last I seen him. 2 months later, I saw more combat coming out of a helicopter under fire in the Central Highlands, chasing down some enemy mortar squads. And I could hear the bullets singing and hitting the skin of the ship. So I jumped out, landed in the tall grass, and a bamboo spear went right to my leg. That took me out of combat, sent me to the hospital in Japan where they reconstructed my knee, sent me to Okinawa, and they didn't have a job for me except for sentry dogs. And that's how I learned about dogs. Well, I had this dog named Hans, and I learned the basic things with the dog: come, heel, sit, stay, bonding relationship, feeding, caring, grooming, all those things you do, and how to use them in an attack mode. So I volunteered to go back to Vietnam to an airborne unit, the 173rd, and be with the Ranger detachment they had there. My leg was in good shape, so I bought me a knife, a camera, and off I went to Vietnam again. When I got there, I didn't get the assignment I wanted. Well, they had some scout dog teams there and a scout dog platoon, and I saw these dogs and these handlers, and they asked for some volunteers because they had some people that they needed to fill some of the dogs that didn't have a handler. So I volunteered. My first dog was Timber. Timber and I were on our first mission in an armored personnel carrier. All of a sudden, they spotted a large enemy unit moving across our front, so we were closest to them, so we were given the order to chase them down. Well, I'm in the inside of the truck. All I'm hearing is a radio squawk, and I got my hand on my dog's leash and my rifle and my bandolier ammunition and my pack stowed. And then all of a sudden, bam, the track stopped. A big old loud explosion hit the front of it. The cab filled with smoke. We jumped out of the back. There was only two other guys in there aside from me and my dog, Timber. And as I climbed out the back, I dived onto this open area, and we had actually crossed a road, and the enemy was waiting on the other side in an L-shaped ambush, so they caught us all, the entire column like this, and they hit us from the side and the front. So I dragged my dog, and he was jumping up and down. He just could not stand the noise and the explosions and the firing and the machine guns and the enemy rockets hitting the other tracks. We crawled into the jungle, and there I found another soldier there who was wounded pretty bad, had a big chunk of shrapnel sticking out of his head, but he was still okay. He was just delusional. And he didn't know where he was, and he didn't have his weapon, so I dragged him up to the tree with my dog and my rifle and tried to find some place where I could be safe and return fire. I crawled out of the track and into the jungle and found a tree. And so I stood behind this tree and started returning fire. And then all of a sudden the track in the front exploded, and two other tracks exploded. So we lost most of our men. I was wounded again. My dog was wounded seriously. He went down. I was evacuated, went to the hospital, a field hospital. Next morning I woke up, I was feeling fine, just a little sore. So I went back to the kennel to see my dog, and he was sitting in the back of his run, shying away. I said, Timber, Timber. He didn't want to come. He didn't want to go anywhere. He was actually suffering from traumatic stress of that combat scene. He didn't want to do it anymore. So I tried the next day to get him out, running through some basic training, you know, come, heel, sit, stay, let's just go for walks, and he didn't want to do any of it. So we didn't put our dogs down because they couldn't work anymore and because he gave up. We put him in the kennel, fed him, groomed him, took care of him, and his medical wounds healed physically, emotionally, he never did. So I got Clipper, my second dog. Clipper and I worked together for 10 months in the jungle. We hunted the enemy in different base camps. He found base camps, underground tunnel complex entrances that only a dog can sniff out. He found booby traps in the rubber trees. When one guy blew one up, I put my dog in the lead and he navigated us through. We found 5 booby traps at the end of the trail when everybody was lined up in a column behind me and my dog. So he was very valuable. One of the things I learned was I couldn't worry about my own fear factor of walking point with a dog in the lead and having the opportunity to look out for myself, but knew I couldn't. I knew I had to concentrate on that dog because I knew how valuable he was in the sense of finding things that I couldn't see, smell, or hear. A lot of times when you're out there leading a patrol, it's all up to you. I was the interpreter. The dog was really the leader. So there was a lot of things that I had to learn about leaving my own self-awareness to the dog, but maintaining my self-awareness that I had to fight once the fighting started. So there's a lot of things that these dogs did that I couldn't do, that I was very fortunate to live and survive. But I had to leave my dog behind in 1968 when I left because we weren't authorized to bring our dogs home. And I think I'm going to write our story. I thought it'd take 10 or 20 pages just to jot down our memories of what we saw, what we remember, and how we were as young men back in that day, back in that ugly day where we lost so many men. Well, it took me 9 years to put this book together. It's called Dog Tags of Courage. It got published in 2000. I didn't want to publish it. I wasn't interested in going public with my story. It was a personal story. But it threw me into the public domain. And they wanted to hear the dog stories. They were fascinated about the dog. They didn't care about Vietnam so much as the dog stories. And that's what got me started to telling these amazing dog stories. And as I learned more about these stories, I started getting people in the audience telling me, well, my uncle served in World War II and he had a dog. So they would tell me that story. Another one from Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq. People give you a responsibility that you may not want. And then you say, well, gosh, that's going to be a hard one, but you accept it. Once you accept it, you have to finish the job. You have to dig into it until you can come up with either a solution or a damn good reason why it just can't be done. So anyway, public appeal for a national monument was raising. I found out in order to get a national monument, my little investigation and research and analysis took me to the National Park Services. So I called the National Park Services. I said, you guys build monuments, well, how come we don't have a national monument? The first thing you really need to do is find a congressman or a senator that will sponsor a bill of legislation to get it through Congress, get the president to sign it into law. Once you get it into law, then you got a national monument. And I said, that sounds great. She says, it may take you 5, 10, 15 years to do it. So you have to kind of be tenacious. You have to be aggressive, but you have to be diplomatic and honest about what you're trying to do and get from them. So in January 2007, we finally got the legislation written. We put it into the House. It got passed by the House and passed by the Senate, not even one nay vote. So we now had legislation, I had authorization, I had the president's signature saying this country now has a national monument on the books. This is what it all cost. And these are the folks that put everything into it, the American public, individuals, soldiers and airmen and sailors and Marines and Coast Guard sending in their $20 checks. I mean, we got money from all around the world. I made friends in Poland and Germany and Israel and Australia, Canada, Great Britain, you name it. They were sending in their wishful help to get us to do this and followed the progress of the monument and donated what they could. And there it is. I appreciate you taking the time to come here and listen to me. Thank you very much.